Marvin, thank you for taking the time to come down here and speak with us. It's always a treat to talk to you. We've had you on a couple times throughout the years on Behind the Braves, and you're one of our favorites. You're one of our favorite alumni around here, and you do so much amazing work still in the Atlanta community and beyond Atlanta. It's always a treat to have you down here. So first of all, just thank you for taking the time to come down.
Well, if you put a microphone in front of me, I'm right at home. So I appreciate you guys having me in again, and I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we've had you on before, and I know we've had you on. It's like we're always kind of promoting something that's going on here, and we've delved a little bit into your career. We've got some big things we want to promote today too, but I was thinking back on, I was like, I don't know if we've ever done a deep dive on Marvin's playing career on Behind the Braves, so I wanted to start with that today. So early life, born in Chicago, is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Born and raised in Chicago. White Sox or Cubs fan, or who was your team growing up?
Well, growing up, I was a Cub fan because after school, the Cubs game, they played all-day games. So when we get home at 3:15, we were just in time to see the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. And so I was like locked in, glued to the television, waiting on Lee Smith to come in or Bruce Sutter to come in and finish the game, because back then they almost pitched every game. It wasn't like, you can pitch 3 games in a row, then you got to take a week off. But the closers were pitching. If the starter was out there, which was Fergie Jenkins, he was a guy that I looked up to growing up. And WGN was one of the 4 channels that we got in our house, because back then there was no cable. So whatever channel that coat hanger picked up, that's the one we tuned into, and the Cubs just happened to be on. So I was a diehard Cub fan, man.
Did your career overlap at all with Lee or Bruce?
Actually, Lee Smith, I was pitching a game in St. Louis, and it was a game that the Braves were – this is when I was on the Braves. We were up by – I don't know, 8 or 9 runs, and I wasn't even supposed to get in and pitch that game because I had pitched 5 days in a row. And came in and pitched, and I'm pitching in I think it was the 8th inning, and Lee Smith was warming up in the bullpen for the Cardinals. So we were actually getting ready to get on the same field at the same time. I believe he came in after me. But once I actually was on the field with him, that love affair was over. I mean, I'm trying to win for my team. I didn't care who was on the other side. And there was another incident where I was pitching for the Rockies, and Ferguson Jenkins, who was my favorite growing up, he was the Cubs pitching coach. And I'm getting ready to go out and warm up to start the game, and I see him in the other bullpen warming his pitcher up. I stopped my warm-up, ran across the field, and I was like a little kid. I was like, oh, Fergie, Mr. Jenkins, I don't know what to call him. I was like, I just wanted to let you know you were my favorite pitcher growing up, and, I'm from Chicago. I'm back here getting ready to pitch against the Cubs, and I just want to let you know that today our love affair is over. Because I'm going to win this game. And I end up winning that game. And ever since then, me, Lee Smith, Fergie Jenkins, we've been kind of communicating when we see each other at events and stuff like that. I always remind them of those situations. And it's just fun to, like, grow up watching your heroes, and then you're on the same field performing with them. So it was a blast.
That's awesome. So growing up in Chicago, what first sparked your interest in baseball?
Chicago basketball was pretty much the king there. And so I'm 6'7", and my first love was I'm going to the NBA. But every time I went up for a dunk, the ball kept slipping out of my hand. I don't have these big hands that you can palm a basketball with, but they fit perfectly around a baseball. And I've always played like sandlot ball, always imitated my favorite teams. In Chicago, whatever sport, whatever season it is, that's what sport you had to play. So come baseball season, I was always the Cincinnati Reds, because that was when the big red machine was just running over people. And so I always picked the best team. I always been a front runner with that. But baseball was always something that I truly loved. And when I saw games, it was like I looked at them in a way that I can do that right there. I mean, when I'm playing against guys in basketball and they're dunking on me, and I'm like, I don't know, this might not be my choice here. But as a baseball player, I always felt like I had an advantage, because pitching was the only position that I ever played, because I liked to be on stage, and I always used the mound in an analogy as being the stage, because it's the only position on the field that's raised up. Everything else is flat. The shortstop, he's everything's level, but the mound is raised up. It's in the center of the field. And I've always said that pitchers are the lead actors and everybody else is the supporting cast.
Man, that is a beautiful. I've never heard it put that way. That's beautiful, especially even the physical. It's so true, though. You really are up on a pedestal, really, above everybody else.
Absolutely. And when the umpire says play ball, he's pointing at the pitcher. He's not pointing at the right fielder or the shortstop. So the pitcher is number one in the scorecard, and he's probably the most important guy on the field because if you don't have any pitching, you're probably not going too far.
It's the old saying, and not just baseball. Well, in baseball pitching, but like pitching and defense, or defense, you'd say in other sports. But it is true. Without pitching, you can have the greatest lineup in the world, but if you don't have that pitching, you ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, you're
going to lose a lot of 15 to 14 games.
Absolutely, you got the greatest lineup in the world, but you run against a guy that's got a good pitcher, and then he can shut that lineup down. And then now, what are you going to fall back on? So that's the way I reason with it now, and especially when I'm trying to teach other kids how important it is to be a pitcher because it's a very hard position, and it carries a lot of responsibility, and guys sometimes don't want to have to be accountable for what the team is going to have to do as far as the success of the team. So, it's really hard to continue to move up in the ranks as a pitcher, but it's so rewarding because every team needs pitching.
So as you start focusing more on baseball, it becomes clear, like, all right, this is where I think I can really compete. I'm sure you always dreamed of becoming a professional athlete. When did it start to become apparent to you, like, hey, I think I can actually do this? Like, did scouts start coming around in high school, or what was that like? When did that first start to become like, hey, this might actually happen? I might be a pro someday.
Yeah, well, in high school, our high school baseball team, we were pretty good. So we're playing for the city championship, and we're going up against this team that had a really, really hot pitcher. He was a guy that I've heard about throughout the newspaper clippings and stuff growing up in Chicago. And we're getting ready to play them in the playoffs at Old Comiskey Park. So when you're playing in the city playoffs, they let you play at the big league stadium. This guy was a senior. I was a junior. And when I got there and I saw how many scouts were there to see him, then I was like, well, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to be seen as well. We end up beating this team 10-0. I pitched a shutout. And after the game, scouts were like, well, we came to see this guy, but who are you? And I was like, okay, all right, I got it going now. The train is starting to roll downhill. And then going into my senior year, as I'm pitching games, there's more and more scouts showing up. So I was like, hey, maybe I might have a chance to actually live this dream. And then I got drafted in the 8th round by the Montreal Expos out of high school. And then reality kicked in. I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm ready to be a professional at 18. So I ended up going to college at Jackson State University, went there for 3 years. And then after my 3rd year there, I got drafted by the Phillies in the 2nd round. And I knew I was ready then because 3 years of college, if you don't learn nothing then, you're probably not going to learn anything at all. So I knew that baseball was going to be the way that I can, like, put my stamp on my own legacy and begin to do things that was going to help set up my family, the years after I'm playing. So that worked out pretty good.
That's a heck of a mature decision to make at age 18. I mean, I can only compare to myself at 18, and I don't know that I would have been grown enough to make that choice of, I don't know that I'm ready for this yet. I think there's a lot that would just be like, Expos drafted me, like, this is my chance, got to go no matter how I feel about it. But that's pretty, I think that's pretty amazing that you had the maturity to say, don't think I'm there yet. Was that a difficult decision for you, or were you were pretty comfortable with that from the get-go?
No, it was, the Expos made it pretty easy, offering me hundreds of dollars to be a professional when I was already making a pretty good living. I was a violin bow maker in high school.
All right, I'm glad you said that because I had found that on the internet, and not everything you read on the internet's true. But I was going to ask you about it. So that's true, huh?
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely, man. I went to a vocational high school, and they taught us different skill sets like auto mechanics, drafting, woodworking, cabinet making, architecture, and I was a pretty good cabinet maker. So the owner of the bow shop saw some of the work that I did, and he offered me an apprenticeship to teach me how to make violin bows. And, when I first got there, I was like, I didn't even know what a violin bow was. I knew what a violin was, but I'm asking him, man, how do you play a bow? He was like, what? I was just willing to learn, and I was a senior, so I needed a job to be able to afford buying myself a tuxedo to take my girlfriend to the prom. So that was my motivation for even starting to look for a job, but it just happened to happen to whereas the academic training that I had in cabinet making parlayed over into me being a bow maker. And I'm telling you, I was making probably about $800-900 a week part time.
Wow.
And this is 1980. So, I mean, I was like, hey, I might just go ahead and be a bow maker. And at that time, it was maybe January of my senior year, and then I ended up getting drafted in June. And so I was already making pretty good money. And then when the Expos offered me such a low signing bonus, I was like, well, I can pretty much have something to fall back on. I never really had the thought process without if I fail, I'm going to do something else. I was always like, whatever I'm going to do, that's what I'm going to do because I said I'm going to do it. And so when I said I was going to be a major leaguer, I put all my chips in and I was like, whatever I need to do for this, the way that I have to prepare myself for this is what I'm going to have to do. But I knew I hadn't even been away from home as a high school athlete for any substantial amount of time. And knowing that if I had to move out, go ahead and get up and do a 9-to-5 as a baseball player, not really knowing what was going to happen. And it's not like, you're going to get a chance to say, okay, this didn't work out. Let me go back to college and play now. It was a total commitment that you had to buy into. I knew I wasn't ready for that. I said, well, let me see how I can last in college, being away from home, getting over the homesickness, being able to take care of myself without having mom wake me up in the morning. And so that really taught me how to grow up and be a man. And then after 3 years, I was 21. I was ready to, stake my claim in baseball. And I signed with the Phillies in '84. I was in the major leagues in '86.
How was that transition going from college to pro ball, but in the minor leagues, which is, I think, regardless of what era it was, the minors it's a grind if you're in it. And a lot of guys are in it for a long time. What was that experience like?
It was it was gladiator school. I mean, if you had fun every day in the minor leagues, you're probably going to stay there. So every day I came to the park, I had a different type of mentality to whereas I'm still here, what do I got to keep doing to get up out of here? So it made me focus, made me have to really channel my focus on my career. I had just got married as soon as I signed, so I had a wife. I was like, I don't have time to play around. And she was like, hey, you know what? When you asked me to marry you, you said you were going to be a pro ball player. And we're in cities like Bend, Oregon, Reading, Pennsylvania. She was like, this ain't what I see on TV. So it was more of a motivation for me to, hey, let's go, buddy. You said something. Let's go ahead and live with it. And she's always been able to push me and motivate me. And even to this day, we just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary in December.
Oh, that's awesome. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We're still riding high off of it. We're looking at videos, and we're just smiling and laughing every night. So it's been a journey that both of us have taken, and we've had an understanding that, we got to do this together. And she's always been a motivation for me.
That's wonderful. Well, I think that segues pretty nice into what I wanted to ask about next, and that's a certain week in September of 1986. You had one heck of a week in September of 1986. You get called up, make your big league debut. 5 days later, get your first win, and your daughter is born on the same day as you get your first big league win. Is that all correct?
That is 100% correct.
What in the world was that week like?
Oh, man, it was like, every day we were on baby watch. I was like, is it going to happen today? She was like, no, I'm good. I said, okay, so I'm making my major league debut. We good, right? She was like, yeah, we good. And she was always telling me, look, if I could have this baby, and I'm not going to call you till after I have the baby because you're only going to have one major league debut, but we can have more than one child. I was like, okay, yeah, well, all right, yeah, right. But I still want to be there. Anyway, pitched against the Pirates. 5 days later, pitching against the Mets, and this was the year the Mets won the World Series in '86. So they team was stacked. I think the Phillies was like 20 games out. So I'm like, I'm not going out here and getting embarrassed. I want to go out here and still do the best that I can. End up pitching 7 innings, gave up 1 hit. We got the win. But during the game, I would say about the 4th inning, still hadn't heard any word from her. Glenn Wilson comes running out of the locker room. He was a right fielder for the Phillies, and he goes, "Hey man, your wife just called. She had the baby. Everything's all right. She's good." I was like, "We're not good. We don't even have any runs." I said, "So go out there and get me some runs, guys." I'm walking up and down the locker room, man. My daughter's born. I got to win this game. They end up putting up 4 runs in the 4th inning. We end up winning the game 7-1, and then I jumped on a plane because the airport was right there in New York, right by the stadium, and I had just brought, I wanted to look professional. I wanted to look the part. On the way through the airport, I got a suit on, but I don't have nothing in my hand, so I went into one of those little luggage stores in the airport and bought a briefcase. It was nothing in the briefcase. I'm carrying it around like I'm James Bond walking through the airport. And then I get off the plane. I'm walking through the hospital, going up to her room, and everybody's like, "Oh, this guy looks like he's somebody. He's got a briefcase." I'm like, "Ain't nothing in it, But I'm walking, and then I get in there, and I see them, and it was just like, it was like heaven, man. I'm like, I got to win, and my daughter is born on the same day. So every year, September 21st, when I call my daughter and tell her, "Hey, you know what today is?" She's going, yeah. It's the first day you got your major league win. So it's ironic because there's a song that goes, the 21st of September.
Yeah, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Remember. And so I was like, man, they made a song about us. So, I mean, it was like the stars were perfectly lined up for us on that day.
That's amazing. Did you keep anything from that day? Did you keep the briefcase, the scorecard, anything, or nah?
I still got my daughter.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, that counts. That counts. Wow, what an amazing story. So not just on the day, but in the middle of the game, you went back out there.
Man.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable.
Oh, amazing. Where was she born at? You had to get on a plane. Where did you have to go?
Back to Chicago.
Back to Chicago. Okay.
Yeah, because I had just got called up, so. When you're in the minors, you get called up. The wife, she's got to go home. I mean, you get called up to another city. You got to pack everything, jump in the car, drive to the next city. And so another thing was I was still on minor league insurance. So I used to tell her all year, I got to get called up. I got to get called up before this baby is born because we got to get on that major league insurance. And I got called up a week before my daughter was born. I was on major league insurance. So we had a private suite at the hospital that she was actually born in. So it was like, man.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I always tell guys. I said, guys, if you see things in your own mind, you'll take steps to make those things happen. And you have to look into the future of how you want things to be. And then that will help you determine if what move you're making now is going to allow you to go on that path, or is it going to be something that stumbles you up. So that's one of the things that I teach, and I teach that from the experience that I've had.
That's so great. So you finally get called up in '86. You get some big league time, and then the next few years, you're doing that, kind of having to go back and forth a little bit. That a lot of pros have gone through over the years, bouncing back and forth between AAA majors with the Phillies, until you get traded to Atlanta in 1990. So just that time period of bouncing back and forth, that's got to be a grind too. What was that like? And then getting traded to Atlanta, what was that like?
Well, once you get called up to the major leagues, you have to learn how to be a professional at the major league level. Being a professional at the minors, guys are going to fall off because they're not doing things that's going to help them become more consistent. And so the things that I was doing as a pitcher, I could get away with at a lower level. But once I got to the major leagues, I needed to learn how to pitch to certain defenses. I needed to be able to command my fastball more. I had to be more consistent with my breaking ball. And those things took time, especially when it's 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people in the stands. They're not going to be real patient with you going out there trying to figure it out. And after 2 or 3 innings, you're always making a mess for the team. So I was learning how to be a big league pitcher. Watching some of the guys that had success that was already up there, really starting to understand how my body moved and how it worked, really gaining a understanding of what it means to pitch a guy away because the defense is playing away. I was like, look, my stuff is so good, I can just throw it right down the middle. Then I found out that wasn't going to work. So once I refined my thinking, it gave me an opportunity to get more consistent. And then by the time I started getting consistent, the Phillies were tired of me. They was like, hey, look, man, look, we went this far with you. I had just pitched a no-hitter against the Braves in AAA. And I guess the Braves was like, well, the Phillies don't want this guy. We'll take our chances with him, because then the Braves were not really a winning organization. I think when I first got traded to the Braves, it was like 5,000-6,000 people in the stands in '90. So when I was out there, I was able to really listen to my own thoughts, think about making sure that I can execute, understanding that, hey, you may not get too many more chances to come out here and prove yourself. So I had to refocus. The Phillies had me starting relieving. When I got to the Braves said, look, you're going to be a reliever over here. So that kind of let me have an understanding of how to prepare myself. And then watching guys go out there like I think it was Smoltz, Steve Avery, and Tom Glavine was here then. They were young pitchers, and we were all kind of young together. But seeing how they prepared, seeing how they threw their bullpen, seeing how they worked on getting ready for a game gave me a better understanding of what I needed to do, because I was trying to figure things out just basically using talent. And everybody's got talent when you get to the big league level. Now it's going to come down to preparation and being consistent. So I developed a little bit more consistency as I got my feet wet with the Braves. They started putting me in more and more important situations. And like to say the rest is history, but, I was still wanting to be a starter. So I was going to, lay back in the weeds, do my thing, bide my time out, and just see how long before the Braves got a chance to, get rid of me as well. And moving on to Colorado, it gave me a chance to be a starter again. Now I got all this information that I gained over the last 6 or 7 years, and I can apply it. And I still went out and did my best Greg Maddux impersonation in 1994 and finished 4th in Cy Young that year. So it was all things came full circle, and everything that you do in this game, you got to keep learning from it, whether it's good or bad. You got to take something from it that's going to help you get better.
I did want to ask you about those early '90s years with the Braves, because I think me growing up as a Braves fan, but first being a kid, but first becoming a fan with those early '90s teams, I feel like a lot of people my generation, some older, some younger, there's those early '90s teams, especially '91, but '91, '92, '93. They hold a really special place in a lot of Braves fans' hearts, because it was the '91 team. I mean, you said, you had 5,000-6,000 people in the stands in 1990. '91, you guys electrified the city. You became rock stars.
It was
throughout the country.
unbelievable.
Yeah, what was that like?
Scalping tickets. People were, like, we'll come wash your car if you just let us come to the game. I remember we were at dinner one time. Me and my wife was at dinner. We were at a restaurant in Atlanta, and the manager recognized us, and I was like, hey, I don't know anybody here. You want a couple tickets to the Braves game? And he was like, what? This was '91, and it was like in the height of the pennant race. We're going back and forth. Tickets were hard to come by. I gave him 4 tickets to a Brave game, because back then you got, they gave us like 6 or 7 tickets that we can use. I put him on the pass list. He showed up, had the time of his life. The next time we went to that restaurant, he was like, look, you can eat free here every single time you come. I said, wait a minute now. I know a lot of people from Chicago that's coming down. He was like, bring them all in. And I don't know why he told me that, man. We showed up with about 8 people the next time, and we sat there like it was King Henry VIII. We was killing him. And he was like, hey, don't worry about it. It's all good. And I remembered that. And at the end of the season, I gave him 2 World Series tickets, and he almost cried when I gave them to him. So it was always a way for me to let guys know that I'm just a dude that's playing baseball that's just like everybody else, man. I appreciate where I'm at. I appreciate the people that appreciate me, and I want to show that we're all on this planet trying to do the same thing: live, love, and laugh together. And those are the things, those are the standards that I live by now.
That's awesome. So you already brought up Colorado, but I was going to ask about that, and it's got to be bittersweet because season gets cut short. But at the same time, I feel like it had to be so fulfilling for you that like you finally put all of it together and you were starting again. And also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm just going off of my, I guess at that time, 10-year-old brain of ever occasionally seeing a Colorado Rockies game. But when they first started, it seemed like if you got to see a Rockies game on TV, like it was a fun atmosphere out there. New team, new city, new everything. So what was that like being on a team that had just started up?
Well, you know, I was on the Braves in 92 and 93, and the Rockies had just come into existence in 93, and we go out there to play them. It's like 80,000 people at the game.
Was it Mile High
It was
to begin
Mile
with?
High. Yeah, it was Mile High, the old football stadium. They converted into baseball, so you can get 80 to 100,000 people in there. But it was 79, 80,000 people at the game, and I'm looking around like, wow, boy, it was exciting. The first year in Colorado, the fans were at a frenzy. The Braves coming to town. The Braves known for winning. They want to see all the stars, and we get out there and we were just running through the Rockies like, like water. We won, I think, the first 13 games against them. They didn't beat us the whole year in '93. Fast forward to '94, I go to Rockies as a free agent, and now I'm starting again, and so I get to come back to Atlanta and face the Braves as a starter. And then I end up beating Tom Glavine, and that was probably one of the most exciting moments in my life, to go away, come back, get the first win against the Braves in Rockies history against my old team, and we're going back and forth every day that we're out here on the field. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do to y'all tomorrow. I'm going to show y'all I should have been a starter here, this, that, and the other. And after I won the game, I guess the reporters were interviewing me after the game, and they thought I was going to be just jumping around, dancing on tables in the locker room. Yeah. So I was just chilling. They was asking me, so how's it feel? And at that time, I was 7-1, and I gave probably the coolest interview that I've ever done in my life. I was sitting back, and they had all these mics in front of me, and they wanted me to be pointing fingers. I told you should have kept me. This is what I can give. And I was like, well, the Rockies came to town with the thought that we've been playing good baseball, and I've been pitching pretty well, and I just went out there and done what I've been doing all year. And they go, come on, Marvin, you got to be more excited than that. Inside, I'm jumping around. I'm doing backflips in my own stomach. But outside, yeah, being a professional, I just went out there and did the things that I'm normally doing. So I was real super calm, and they were like, yeah, okay. But after I'm out of the game, I'm posting on my social media all the time. Man, that was one of the most exciting moments besides my daughter being born that I've ever had on the field, was coming back and beating the Braves. And it really felt good because they started doing the tomahawk chop against me. I was like, yeah, right. I know how to shut that up. So that was a lot of fun back then.
That's awesome. So you end up, you're with the White Sox for a little bit, but then finally decided to call it a career. What was that like when you decided it was time to do something else?
Well, it's funny that, it's a story behind everything that I do. And so when I was trying to make a comeback, I was in AAA with the Blue Jays. My son was just born the year before in '96. So my daughter was born at the beginning of my career. My son was born, and it's funny that I knew he was going to be born on this particular day because I'm pitching a game in Colorado, and I had never had a complete game. And so I'm on the mound in the ninth inning, and I just, I'm looking around in the stands, and I'm taking it all in, and I'm going, I'm about to pitch a complete game. I say, I know my son is going to be born tomorrow. I'm saying this in the actual game. Next pitch, I gave up a home run to Hal Morris. They came and took me out.
Oh, man.
I'm walking off the field, man. I get in the dugout. I told the trainer, hey, man, get my plane ticket. I know my wife is going to have this baby tomorrow, so I want to be there for this one. But up until that point, my daughter was always like, are you going to be here all year this time? I'm like, no, Daddy's got to go to work. And after I retired, I retired in '97, came home, and my daughter was like, what are you still doing here? I said, Daddy's going to be here. She was like 10 years old now. She was like, you mean you live here all year round? And the Blue Jays, they called me because I was so bored. I was trying to figure out how to play golf. I was just, what am I going to be doing next in these next 30 years of my life? So trying to play golf. Blue Jays called me back. I wanted to do something. I went back to spring training with the Blue Jays, got ready. They sent me to AAA. I'm warming up in the bullpen. The manager called down and asked me, "You want to get an inning?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go out there and pitch an inning." Went out, pitched an inning, came off the field. It was a ninth inning, so I got the last out. Coming off the field, fans are standing by the where the players exit. A couple kids were standing over there with some baseball cards. And they weren't sure if it was me or not because it was Braves or Phillies cards. I can't remember the card. And I hear one kid say to the next, "No, that's him. No, really, that's him." The other was like, "No, that ain't him." The other one was like, "Yeah, that's him." So I roll over, I look at him, I look at the card. I said, "What are you guys doing?" And then one of the kids go, "Didn't you used to be Marvin Freeman?"
Jeez. Oh, no.
I went home that night, man. I got back to the hotel. I called the wife. I said, "Baby, I'm coming home. It's over." I said, but he was right, man, because I'm sitting in the dugout down in the bullpen, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, come on, man. You got to do something else. You're 35 now, I remember when I was in the minors, and I used to see 35, 36-year-old guys trying to make a comeback, and I used to look at them side-eye like, dude, it's time for you to do something else, man. Your time is up. Let the young guys have a shot. And then I heard my own voice saying that to me. So that's when I decided, hey, I'm going to give everything I can to helping others get to the point that I reached. And I went home and I started coaching high school baseball. And then that developed into the career that I'm doing now.
Well, kids really, the unfiltered truth of children
Oh,
sometimes,
they
it just cuts you right to
they
the
cut you
soul.
right in the gut. And you got to be like, hey, you know what? You're right, man. I mean, face reality. It's over, dude.
Well, let's get into what you've been doing since then. I mean, so you're back in Chicago when you first retire, right? But at some point you come down here to Atlanta. At some point you start the Marvin Freeman Youth Foundation. I mean, just you mentioned you're coaching high school ball. So how did all that develop into what you're doing now and the foundation work?
Okay, so as I'm figuring out my life in Chicago, I decided to go watch one of the local high school teams that was in my community, and the baseball was so bad that I just volunteered to just come out and coach. And the coach was like, "Hey, man, you can have the team." He gave me the team and walked away. I was like, "Okay, well, I'll do it. It's good. I'm not doing anything else. I can't play golf for 10 hours a day." And so I started coaching the team, had a meeting with the parents. I was like, "Look, I know we only won like 3 games last year, and that's because you guys didn't practice. We're going to practice every day." They were like, "Practice every day?" I'm like, "Yeah. I mean, that's what you do in baseball if you want to learn the fundamentals." So we start practicing every day. This is the same team that can barely, win a game the year before. The next year, we end up winning 20 games, going to the playoffs, all because they had an idea of what it is they're trying to do. So during the course of this high school coaching, I only had maybe 4 or 5 pitchers that I can pretty much like pour into. And so I found myself coaching the other team's pitchers during the game as well. And my team was like, "Coach, we're trying to beat them." I'm like, "Well, I hate to see bad baseball. So if I see a guy on the mound, I'm giving signs to my hitter at third, and I'm talking to their pitcher on the field. And I'm like, 'Hey, you're flying open, man. Keep that front shoulder closed.'" This is during the game, and they're going, "He struck me out because you told him what to do." I'm like, "Well, I'm a pitcher at heart, so I got to try and find a way to really specify my coaching so I can reach more kids." And so I started Marvin Freeman Baseball Academy in Chicago, where I just started doing pitching. I just started exclusively working with pitchers. Got a chance to work with a lot of young pitchers at a young age, 9, 10, 11, give them some fundamentals. Then I start seeing as they developed and got older and bigger and stronger, they start moving up, going to college. And then some of those guys end up getting drafted. And I'm like, well, this is where I can make an impact at, because it's so hard to pitch, and a lot of these guys don't really have an understanding of what they need to do. And I start learning these things as a 3 or 4 year major leaguer. So I say, I know they don't know this stuff now. So I start teaching at a level, at a pro level, to youth pitchers. So I didn't talk down. I didn't dumb it down. I didn't make it, simple. I just made them be able to understand it in a way that they can apply it and practice it and work on it. And now I'm seeing excuse me, I'm seeing the fruits of a lot of things that I started way back in what was it? When did I retire? 1999. Back in '99. Now I'm seeing some of these guys. A few of them are already in the big leagues. A lot of them are in the minors, and I probably work with 1,000 pitchers, just trying to make sure that they understand how hard the game is, and then give them some, instruction on how they can make it easier, and then that keeps them playing until they can't play anymore.
We've been doing this show Behind the Braves since 2018. We're over 200 episodes in now. And one of my favorite moments from all this time, I think it was the first time we had Marquise on. We were asking him, we were talking about the RBI program and boosting African-American participation or getting more black ball players into the big league level because the percentages dropped so low. And so I was asking him about, getting more of these young men into the game and getting more to the next level. And he said something that it'll always stick with me. He goes, well, the thing is about the work I'm doing, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but this is basically what he said. I'm not trying to raise ball players. I'm trying to raise young men.
Absolutely.
And that really stuck with me because I came into that interview so focused on, we need to because I grew up watching, like, David Justice poster was on my wall. Mm-hmm. I watched guys like you. I watched Lee Smith pitch for the Cubs. I mean, this was what I grew up on. Ken Griffey was, I was a Braves fan, but all my buddies were Ken Griffey was God to those guys.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
That's my guy right
So I'm like, we need to boost this. But when Marquis said that just completely turned my thinking on it. And I thought, man, he's so right. And even what you just said there, you said you've worked with 1,000 pitchers. You work with 1,000 athletes of any kind, only in just a finite number of them are ever going to make it. I mean, that's just the simple math of it. They're ever going to make it to the big league level. But the impact that you have across all 1,000, that's the real important work that's being done.
Oh, absolutely, man. One of my pitchers is the anchor for the WGN News in Chicago, Tamon Bradley. He was my backup catcher when I first took over as a high school coach. And I used to tell those guys all the time, I'm like, look, man, only 1% out of the world. That means if it's 7 billion people in this world, you only got 700 major leaguers. How many have not made it? So, but what you can do is take the principles that's going to help make you a major leaguer, like dedication, hard work, believing in yourself, and perseverance. Those things apply in life. And if you can apply those things to your life and whatever things that you're doing, you take that route, then you're going to be a productive man. And that's where me and Marquise kind of mesh, because when I came down here and worked with his organization in 2015, we had pretty much the same kind of thought process, but his platform was so much bigger because he from Atlanta and he was doing things down here already. And when I came down here and worked with his son was like 14 years old then, and he didn't really know a lot about pitching, but I worked with him. And then I told Marquise, I said, hey, man, look, I'm moving down here. I'm moving down to Atlanta. You inspired me to inspire others. I mean, I started my foundation because I saw some of the things that he was doing. All the things that I've been doing out of pocket for free and just trying to do it all on my own. And then my wife was like, look, you're going to need some help, man. You dipping into the savings to pay kids travel fees. I was like, well, if we start a foundation, we can get some sponsorship, and then we can start trying to do some of these things with the help of the community. And so we started the Youth Foundation in 2018, and we're giving college scholarship money to deserving, qualified applicants. The criteria is they have to have community service hours, they have to have a 3.0 grade point average, they have to do things that's going to allow them to be capable of playing in college. And then if they maintain their grade point average, we continue to give them an endowment every year as long as they reach those criteria. So we're helping them move on, and most of the time they realize that, I'm not going to be a major leaguer, but I can be a doctor, and it carries expenses. And so any little amount of money that they can get on a scholarship or something that we can help them out with is the things that we focused on. And we know we're not going to help a million people. But if we can touch the lives of one or two, and then they can go into their adulthood with an advantage, or even just trying to level the playing field so that they have a better chance of achieving some of the goals that they can achieve, then we felt like we've done our part, and that's our mission.
That's wonderful. It's a big, exciting year for us here with the Braves. We're hosting the All-Star Game, but it's not just the All-Star Game. What comes with the All-Star Game is really a week of a ton of events, activations, activities, stuff for the fans, different things going on. It's a really exciting time. One of the coolest things that comes along with hosting the All-Star Game now is hosting the HBCU Swingman Classic. So I know you, Marquise, and we mentioned Ken Griffey. You guys have done a lot of work with that. So just for fans who are going to be coming to Atlanta for this year, maybe they've heard of the Swingman Classic, maybe they haven't. I mean, what's it about, and what's the work that you guys do, and what's that event like?
Yeah, with Major League Baseball, they're trying to get more exposure to the HBCU players. 2 years ago, they started the Swingman Classic, and the first game was out in Seattle. I coached that game with Marquise, and Jerry Manuel was the manager, and several other Major League players were on the field, and we got a chance to see HBCU players from all over the country come together and put their talents on display in a venue that was unbelievable. I think it was probably about 25,000 people there, and it was like a big picnic. I mean, we were just out there partying, playing ball. The game was clean. The guys were out there performing. A couple guys ended up getting drafted based off their performances and that. And we just put them in a spotlight to show that, it really doesn't matter where you play if you have the ability, because talent should rise and you should be able to be seen. And this was just a event that gave them an opportunity to be seen. I think last year they had it in Texas. This year it's going to be in Atlanta. We're definitely going to be a part of it there. A lot of players that I work with understand that I went to Jackson State University. I got drafted out of high school. I had opportunities to go to Power Fives and things of that nature. But like I said earlier, I hadn't been away from home yet, so I didn't know how I was going to fit in the real world, being a 18-year-old black kid on campus. I didn't want to have to deal with a lot of things that was, that I didn't have to deal with. So I wanted to go somewhere where I saw a lot of people that looked like me. I can kind of blend in and just ease into this baseball thing. And I was always an academic. I was an academic All-American in college, so I didn't worry about grades. I already knew how to, get through class and stuff like that. But I had to maneuver life, and I didn't want anything to take away from what my focus was going to be. And so just being in a comfort zone allowing me to go out and grow as a man and experience things and at my own pace. That's why I chose Jackson State.
That's awesome. Well, the Swingman Classic, I think tickets just went on sale the other day. So folks, if you're listening, you're coming to Atlanta for All-Star Week, definitely check that out and come check out the Swingman Classic. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you before I've already kept you longer than I intended to, but I got to ask you a little bit about Michael Harris. So a couple years back, one of my favorite projects I've gotten to work on with the Braves, we did a documentary about Michael Harris, The Dream and the Journey. It's on Braves YouTube if you haven't seen it. It's been on MLB Network some as well. We were planning this documentary, of course, working with Michael and his parents, who I got to meet, and they're just such wonderful people. And we were talking about, okay, who all do we want to try to interview in this thing? And, of course, Marquise was on the list, and we talked about Michael's high school coaches. And I'm just gonna brag on myself here. I said, we got to get Marvin Freeman. I said, Marvin knows him. He's worked with him. and I can tell by the social media stuff that he posts with Michael, and he calls him his son jokingly. I'm like, they got a cool relationship. Marvin is awesome. Whenever, well, you said it earlier, you got a microphone in front of your face, you're comfortable. I'm like,
Absolutely.
I'm like, we got to get him in there, and at the end of the day, one of maybe my favorite line from the whole thing, and I went ahead and wrote it down just so I didn't mess it up. We were talking about towards the end of the documentary about, hey, man, like Michael Harris, like, this could be you. Like, you know, you should be inspired by this young man's journey. And you said, this guy's not from another planet. He's from Stockbridge, Georgia, right around the corner. Grew up a Braves fan. That, to me, was my favorite line from the whole thing because I just loved that was your perspective on it. So since then, you know, Mike's won the Rookie of the Year, obviously. I'm a little biased because I am a Braves employee and I'm a lifelong Braves fan. But I think Mike, especially what we saw from him last year, he came back from injury, the way he was playing, I think this guy's going to compete and hopefully win an NL MVP someday. I really, truly believe that. So what's that been like for you, having the relationship that you have with him, watching him blossom into, I mean, he's not just a big leaguer, he's a star in this game now. So what's that been like for you to see that progression of his career?
I mean, it's not. I'm not surprised because I know what kind of player he is. We were just practicing the other day. We got a whole group of Atlanta pros. Marquise Jr. was pitching against Mike Harris, and I'm standing behind the mound, and I'm like, look, this is your best friend. Let's go ahead and abuse him. So he struck him out on 4 pitches, and I'm like, I posted a lot of this stuff on my Instagram these last couple of days, but you know, guys like Lawrence Butler, who came up and made a huge splash with the Oakland A's last year. We got Mark Church. He's a local guy. He's gonna be in Texas Rangers bullpen. Marquise Jr., he had a great year last year with the Nationals. He's going to big league camp. So a lot of these guys, they go at it each and every day against each other, so it's not like they're holding one above the next. They're feeding off each other. And Michael is just the kind of guy that, you know, when you're around him, he blends in with whatever circumstance that he's around. So it just, you know, these guys are humble, but they're hungry, they're competitive, and then they have a understanding that each one is trying to bring each one along. So just being out there with these guys year in and year out, getting them ready to go to spring training or, you know, aiding in them getting ready is such a joy for me. And when I get home, I'm showing my wife all these videos, and she's going, yeah, okay. I was like, no, watch this right here. So I'm excited as well. So this is my way of actually still being on the field with these guys. You know, my heart is in it with them. If they do well, I'm happy for them. If they don't do well, I'm calling them up to tell them something that I've seen. But my whole forte has been trying to help the pitchers. And since Michael don't pitch anymore, I'm trying to help my pitchers get him out.
Nice.
So we're still going back and forth with it every day in practice. So it's just been a fun time for them and me and Marquise and Luke Collier as well. We've all been, you know, instrumental in helping get these guys prepared for the next level and giving them some, you know, peeks of what's going on behind the scenes at a big league organization, telling them things that we know that they're going to be confronted with. So they're not surprised by anything that happens. They can just actually prepare, go out here and play, and have an understanding how to execute.
That's awesome. Well, before we go, you got to tell everybody where to follow you on Instagram and where to check out your foundation online.
Well, you can check out our foundation at marvinfreemanyouthfoundation.org. There's a donate button on there. So for anyone that wants to help us in our journey of making a lot of these young men make their dreams possible by helping contribute to our source, then that's where you go, marvinfreemanyouthfoundation.org. You can follow me on all social media at Freeman Baseball. My Instagram is not only informative, but it's entertaining as well. It's all baseball. You don't have to worry about anything that's not rated G,
Right.
because I want the kids to come on there and learn some things and see some things, and I do different kind of inside the mind of a big league pitcher so they can kind of get my thoughts of what I'm doing, and I got pretty much all of my Braves footage, me going against the Braves and me pitching for the Braves. So sometimes you're going to see something on there I'm handling my business against the Braves, and you might be, you know, looking at me a little sideways, but don't take it personally. I'm teaching.
That's right.
So you can find me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter X at Freeman Baseball, and that's where I'm at.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I can verify you are very entertaining, and it is G-rated, but you have a lot of valuable lessons there, and there's also just laughs there too, which is great, and that's what social media should be. So, Marvin, thank you so much, man. We very much appreciate your time.
I'm glad to be here, and my parting words is live, laugh, and love hard.
Love it. Thank you, Marvin.